This is a $1,200 gaming PC, and it's getting harder and harder to do this every single week this year. 2025 has been a crazy year so far with new GPU launches, crazy price hikes, and just overall market shortages that are coming this year, and we don't really know what things are going to be looking like. So there's been a lot of talk about whether or not you should buy a PC right now, build a PC right now, or just wait until things kind of settle down. This one does a few things different from my normal PC builds. One, it has an AMD GPU, and two, this one we have some AliExpress and even some eBay inside. So definitely some different things that we have to be doing with this kind of market that we have in today's world. So we're going to be talking about that. Let's go straight to it. Starting off with the CPU, this is the Ryzen 5 7500F. Now coming in with 6 cores and 12 threads, we paid $137.80 for on AliExpress. Now, we've bought 7500Fs tons of times on AliExpress, and that's pretty much the only place you can get them right now. It's just a 7600, a little bit lower clock speeds, and it doesn't have integrated graphics. If you're looking for a easier place to buy it and you don't want to wait as long as the 7500F, you can buy the 7600 on Amazon for like $180. If you're going to be spending an extra $30 for the 7600, I definitely would if it's at that $150 price point, especially because you get the warranty, it's not taking as longer, and it's just a more reputable place if you need to return it in any worst case scenario. So 7500F, good option for you out there if you're looking for a, entry-level AM5 CPU, and overall, paired with our GPU, it actually does pretty nicely. Cooling that CPU, we have the ID Cooling SE214 XT. Now, I actually opted for the black version. Jackson stole it, so I ended up going with the basic one. The difference between the two is the fins on the side here, on the heatsink, they are actually painted black on just the flat black version. It's $17.99 on Amazon regularly. And of course, it comes with a black fan. This one is actually replaced with this fan pack we're gonna be talking about later in this video. But yeah, this is just a basic 4 heat pipe tower cooler. The 7500F doesn't get too hot, so you can get away with a pretty cheap budget tower cooler. If you're looking for an AIO, there's plenty of cheap options out there for you as well, but this one's a pretty good job and it's very, very cheap. Next up, we'll be talking about the motherboard. This is the MSI B650 Gaming Plus Wi-Fi. A couple cool things about this motherboard. B650s kind of vary in price all the time. This one I actually got on sale for $149, so $149 is actually a really good price for this motherboard here. I think it has a 12-phase power design, so it's a pretty good power delivery to the CPU. It has 2 8-pins to the CPU as well, so you pretty much have plenty of power for future upgrades in the future. The rear I/O is actually really impressive on this motherboard too. It has 7 USBs, a 2.5 gig Ethernet, display out, which we don't really need, a USB-C, and tons of audio ports. So it's a pretty good board. I do like the little design on the left side too. No RGB, which to me, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of RGB on motherboards, but yeah, really solid motherboard. It has the nice VRMs on the side. It has the Gen 4 cover. Really can't complain with this motherboard, and $149 is a really good price for it. Paired with a motherboard, we have 2 more things on the motherboard. We have our RAM and our SSD. We're gonna be talking about the SSD next, which is the 2TB Klevv Cras C910 Gen 4 NVMe SSD. Read and write speeds are around like 5,000 with this one. I think it's like 5,000 for the read, and then maybe writes 4,500. Klevv has been a pretty solid brand in terms of reliability for us. We have used them plenty of times for the RAM and storage, and their C910s are pretty solid for the price. We only paid $90.49 for this 2TB drive, and honestly, with how large games have been getting nowadays, I think 2 terabytes is honestly becoming the minimum if you can afford it in a pre-built custom gaming PC, or if you're building your own. I honestly do recommend at least 1 terabyte at the very bare minimum if you're okay with upgrading in the future. But in the future, if you just want to save yourself the hassle, get a 2 terabyte for an extra $40 or $50, and it is a big help in terms of storing all your games and not having to go back into the PC later and working on it. Speaking of Klevv Cras, we have the Klevv Cras V 32 gig DDR5 RGB at 6,000 megahertz, 2x16. Great RAM kit right here. Pretty basic stuff. It just has RGB, but I was just looking for some pretty much straight red RAM that kind of matches the GPU here with all those straight lines as well. So a little bit of thinking involved in that one, but overall, Klevv's been pretty solid, and they work with pretty much any motherboard RGB software, which is what I was really happy about as well. Next up is the GPU, and there's definitely a bit of explaining due for this one. This is the Power Color Red Devil RX 7800 XT, and this is one that I've really wanted to build with for a very long time. Overall, I think it's a really cool looking card, and the 7800 XT is a fantastic 1440p GPU, which you will see in the benchmarks later. The red lines on the sides and on the top, and just the overall size of this GPU made it really compelling for me to pick it up. Now, that's the one thing though, is the ability to pick it up. You have to go to a bit of lengths for searching for one of these GPUs, because overall, 7800 XTs in general are really hard to find right now, and that pretty much serves a purpose for any GPU right now. This build doesn't have an NVIDIA GPU because there are pretty much no NVIDIA GPUs to buy right now. And if you look online, 4070 Super is gone, 4060 Ti's are pretty much at the same point now, and 4070s, same boat. I wanted to find a nice 3-fan GPU that looked good and performed really well too. And I did some eBay searching, and this one I think I found for a pretty good price. Yeah, $425 for this one, and overall, with it being a used GPU, I know they did kind of go down to that price new a couple months ago during Black Friday and those specific Cyber Monday deals. But at this point, you're probably spending like well over $600 if you even want to find one nowadays new on Amazon or even refurbished on Newegg or something like that. So the ability to even pick this card up for that price, although it is used, it is still a pretty good performing GPU, and it really fit this whole build really nicely. Next up, we'll be talking about the case, and it's pretty much a no-brainer for anyone who is at least somewhat versed in the PC world. This is the Hyte Y40. This is a PC case that's pretty much known and loved in the PC community, mainly because it's kind of started the whole fish tank trend, and especially that vertical GPU mount. And being included in the price point, it's a pretty solid case. I will say it also comes with a bottom intake fan, which is why all these fans are set to exhaust right now. And then also it came with one extra fan in the back here, which we ended up replacing. Overall, I do like the size of the Hyte Y40. I think it's not too large, it's not too small. If you're going high end, sometimes if you're doing like a 360 mil radiator, like an Arctic cooler, the height up here on the top can definitely be a bit of an issue, but if you're doing like a 240 mil radiator and a couple fans installed on this thing, it's pretty solid, and it's gonna pretty much fit any GPU you could imagine. So $119 for this Hyte Y40 case with, of course, no installed fans, so we had to buy those as well. So it is on the pricier side, but for the vision that I had with this build, with it being pretty much straight lines, and the case that has no pre-installed fans for these specific fans that I wanted to add in, I think they did a pretty good job with it. This is definitely one of the more parts that I spent a little more money on for aesthetics, but I think it was worth it. Like I mentioned, we added some extra fans inside this case. We have a 4-pack of the Montech AX120 ARGB fans. Now, if you guys have known me at all, these are some of my favorite fans on the market, just because one, they're pretty affordable actually, they're ARGB, and I'm not the typical person that loves those like pretty much full RGB circle fans. They work a lot of the times, especially for budget builds, but when you're kind of going up there in price, I'm either you're doing no RGB or minimal RGB like this that adds that color, but it's not gonna be blinding you whenever it's on your desk. So I love these fans, and we paid about 40 bucks on Amazon for them, so pretty good price for 4 ARGB fans. And I actually bought the 4-pack so I could replace the CPU cooler fan with it to kind of give it the full collected look to it, and I think it turned out really awesome. In addition to the accessories of this PC, we added on some AsiaHorse red sleeve cables, and I think they really turned out really awesome in this build. Again, if you're going for aesthetics, I definitely recommend sleeve cables. If you're not a fan of the red sleeve cables though, you can definitely drop that and save 27 bucks, but I think the $27 investment was far worth it. All right guys, and the last component of this PC, the power supply. If you guys have been watching any Toasty Bros, you guys know this power supply. Segotep GM750W 80+ gold, fully modular. This power supply is pretty much the tried and true Toasty Bros PC power supply, because it's been used so many times, and we actually buy them in bulk, so we get a pretty good deal on them. But on Amazon, you can find them for 75 bucks. So pretty up there with all the other 750 watt 80+ gold power supplies. No failures so far at PC Bros in the I think a year that we've been using them. So we're gonna still be using them until we can't buy them anymore, because they've just been solid, reliable, and a good price. We're gonna be talking about the benchmarks now, and we ran through a ton of games with this PC. Starting off with Fortnite in 1440p DX12 far view distance low textures, we averaged around 300 plus FPS, anywhere between 280 and 330, depending on where you are, what textures are being loaded in and whatnot. And that's after the initial drop, of course. And overall, it's a really smooth experience. You can definitely crank up those settings and still probably average around 240 FPS, because overall, this is a really good system, and far view distance low textures are definitely solid for performance-oriented people, but you can definitely crank up those settings if you want to. Next up, in Wukong at 1440p high settings preset, on the benchmarking tool, we averaged 60 FPS with a max of 71, minimum of 20 with no frame generation. And I actually just played through Wukong about a couple weeks ago, and fantastic game, by the way. If you've been on the fence about buying it, you definitely should, but I actually played the full game through with frame gen on, and I had no issues whatsoever with it. So if you're looking for a higher FPS average on those nice AAA titles, it's definitely still capable of it, and definitely recommend high settings in this game because it looks fantastic. You can definitely jump up into like the 100 frame rate territory with the frame generation on in Wukong on high settings. Yeah, fantastic game, fantastic GPU for it. Next up on the list, we have Marvel Rivals in 1440p, high settings, no frame gen. We average 80 to 90 FPS. Rivals is a pretty hard game to run overall, and 80 to 90 FPS is still pretty respectable in that game. Hopefully, as time goes on, that game becomes more optimized, because compared to the other esports titles, Marvel Rivals is kind of struggling, and I think it's because of Unreal Engine 5. But yeah, it's definitely a solid game. I still recommend it, and this game does a pretty good job on it, maintaining those frame rates pretty reliably and pretty well. In Rainbow Six Siege in 1440p as well, we averaged 545 FPS with a max of 731 and a minimum of 388. Definitely no problems there. Cyberpunk 1440p high, we averaged 109 FPS, a max of 129, and a minimum of 94 with no frame generation as well. Last but not least, we have Monster Hunter, and this is a new benchmarking tool to the market and a new game to the market as well that is pretty demanding, like the other games that we've been testing so far. And with the benchmarking tool, we averaged 72 FPS in 1440p high. Pretty much same settings as all the other games. 72 FPS is a pretty solid number for that high of a demanding game. So yeah, overall, if you're looking just for a nice AAA 1440p high settings gaming PC that can hit over 60 FPS in any game without upscaling, or you're looking for a more competitive esports shooter style PC with the ability to crank out over 244 FPS, this combination really does it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. If there were any things that I'd make any changes to, I really don't think so. I think this is probably a 10 out of 10 build for me. A couple things to note, if you wanted to maybe wait around for this PC, we don't really know how the RX 9070 and the 9070 XT is gonna perform in terms of performance from AMD, but I hear they are releasing them in late March, so you could get your hands on one of those if you want to replicate the style of build, but wanted a different GPU. The 9070 and the 9070 XT should have 16 gigs of VRAM like the 7800 XT does, and rumors are they're not gonna be much better in terms of performance. They could be different, but they should be somewhat close to performance like the 7800 XT and 7900 GRE. So in terms of, bang for your buck and value, if you can find a pretty cheap 7800 XT that's, available, it may be worth picking it up still and not having to worry about, getting price hikes and stuff like that on the new GPUs, because overall, I think it's not gonna be getting much better this year. And that's one thing that's kind of sucks, because a lot of people I know have been holding out for a PC build this year, and they're kind of in a weird spot. So yeah, that's pretty much gonna wrap up this gaming PC build. I really think that this is a pretty good one. So if you wanna shop for any of these parts down below, I'll be having an affiliate link in the description down below. It will help us out. And if you do wanna do some shopping on eBay, definitely just a quick reminder, if you are shopping there, just make sure that you're buying from a reputable seller with a good amount of reviews and a decent return policy in the event that it shows up not working, because that's definitely a big gamble when you're buying any used part online. Just make sure you're covered there. But aside from that, this is definitely a build I'd recommend you copy. And if you did, or if you have any other questions with it, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. If you all did though, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.